Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Bruce Lee was not just a fighter. He was a philosopher, a man who saw beyond the surface of things. One evening, as he walked through the streets, a homeless man reached out with a trembling hand and asked, "Can you give me $1?" What he said in response shocked everyone and left them speechless. It was a typical evening in Hong Kong. As the sky turned a deep purple, Bruce Lee walked along a narrow street lined with old shops and glowing neon signs. His muscles ached from training, but his mind was at peace. Then he heard a voice. "Hey, mister, can you spare $1?" Bruce turned and saw him, a man slumped against a brick wall wrapped in layers of ragged clothing. His beard was thick with neglect, his hands trembling from the cold. His eyes, however, told the real story. They weren't just tired, they were empty. Bruce didn't walk past him. He didn't ignore him. Instead, he crouched down to the man's level. $1? Bruce repeated, his voice calm. "Tell me, what will you do with $1? The man blinked, caught off guard by the question. I'll buy food, maybe a drink to keep warm." Bruce studied him carefully. Then, slowly, he reached into his pocket. The man's breath caught. He expected money. Instead, Bruce placed something small in his open palm, a pebble. The man frowned, confused. "What is this?" Bruce smiled. "What if I told you that this pebble could change your life?" The homeless man let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Man, I don't need a magic rock. I need a meal." Bruce stood up, stretching his arms. "A meal will fill you for a moment, but what if I teach you how to never go hungry again?" The man squinted at Bruce, skeptical. "You some kind of preacher?" Bruce chuckled. "No, but I do know what it's like to struggle. Meet me here tomorrow morning. I'll show you something that's worth more than $1." The man hesitated. He had asked for spare change from 1,000 people before. No one had ever asked him to show up before. Bruce gave him a final nod and walked away, disappearing into the city. That night, as the man who went by the name Red on the streets curled up in his usual spot behind an old market stall, he couldn't shake the thought. $1 was $1. But what if this man, this stranger with piercing eyes, knew something more? The next morning, with stiff limbs and an empty stomach, Red found himself standing outside a small martial arts school. He squinted at the wooden sign hanging above the entrance. Lee Jun Fan Martial Arts Academy. He hesitated. Why am I even here? Then, before he could turn back, the door swung open. Bruce stood there, arms crossed, a knowing smile on his face. "You're late," Bruce said. Red scratched his head. "I didn't know this was a job interview." Bruce chuckled. "It's more than that. Come in." Inside, the air smelled like sweat and sawdust. The floors were worn, the walls lined with mirrors. Young men and women were training, practicing punches, kicks, and focused movements. Red looked out of place. He shifted on his feet, unsure of himself. Bruce grabbed 2 wooden sticks and tossed one to Red. He barely caught it. "What am I supposed to do with this?" Bruce grinned. "Defend yourself." Before Red could react, Bruce swung, fast, controlled, but just slow enough for Red to try blocking. The stick hit his shoulder. "Ow!" Red yelled, rubbing the spot. "What the hell, man?" Bruce stepped closer. "Life is like this. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It hits you. And if you don't know how to defend yourself, it keeps hitting." Red frowned, gripping the stick tighter. "So what? I just learned how to fight?" Bruce shook his head. "Number you, learn how to stand, how to move through life without fear. You asked for $1. I'm giving you something worth much more." Red stared at him, the weight of Bruce's words sinking in, and for the first time in years, he wanted to listen. Weeks passed. Red kept coming back. Every morning he trained. He learned discipline, control, and something he had lost long ago, self-respect. He started walking differently, talking differently. He didn't mumble anymore. His eyes weren't empty. Bruce watched it all with quiet satisfaction. Training wasn't just about fighting, it was about rebuilding. Bruce knew this, and so, beyond the punches and stances, he made sure Red was truly living again. One evening, after a tough session at the gym, Bruce noticed Red hesitating by the door. It was late, and most of the students had already left. Red had nowhere to go, but he wouldn't ask for help. Bruce grabbed his bag and slung it over his shoulder. "Come with me." Red frowned. "Where?" "You'll see." They walked for a few blocks in silence until Bruce stopped at a small diner, the kind of place that smelled like fresh coffee and home-cooked meals. The waitress greeted Bruce like an old friend. "The usual?" she asked, eyeing Red curiously. Bruce Lee nodded and gestured for Red to sit. A few minutes later, 2 steaming bowls of noodle soup were placed in front of them. Red stared at his bowl. He hadn't sat down for a proper meal he couldn't even remember. He picked up the chopsticks but hesitated. "I can pay you back," he muttered. Bruce shook his head. "Eat." For the first few bites, Red ate slowly, almost cautiously, but soon the warmth of the broth, the softness of the noodles was more than just food. It was comfortable. It was a reminder that he was still human. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. After they finished, Bruce paid and stood. "You have somewhere to sleep tonight?" Red wiped his mouth and hesitated. "I'll figure it out." Bruce studied him for a moment. Then he pulled a key from his pocket and slid it across the table. "There's a spare room at my place. It's not much, but it's warm." Red stared at the key, his throat tightening. "Why are you doing this?" Bruce leaned back. "Because someone once did the same for me." That night, Red slept in a real bed for the first time in years. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside, and realized something. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't alone. The following day, after training, Bruce handed Red a small envelope. Red frowned. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a crisp $20 bill. Red looked up, confused. "I never asked you for money again." Bruce nodded. "That's why you earned it." Red stood outside Bruce's gym, gripping the $20 bill tightly. He had been on the street so long that money had always felt like survival. Nothing more, nothing less. But this was different. This wasn't a handout. It was proof that he had changed. He looked down at himself. His clothes were still worn, but he stood taller now. His face wasn't as hollow, his eyes not as lost. He had spent weeks training under Bruce, learning not just how to fight, but how to think, how to move through life with purpose. Still, doubt lingered. Could he really turn his life around? That night, instead of sleeping in his usual alleyway, Red found himself walking toward a shelter he had once avoided. It had always felt like a place for those who had given up, but tonight, it felt like a fresh start. The staff welcomed him, offering a bed and a hot meal. As he ate, he realized something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Over the next few weeks, Red started looking for work. It wasn't easy. His past followed him like a shadow. Employers saw the unshaven face, the lack of an address, the years missing from his resume. But every time he felt like quitting, he heard Bruce's voice in his head. "Life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It hits you. Keep moving." Then, one evening, after another long day of searching, Red returned to Bruce's gym. He wasn't there to train this time. He had come with a purpose. Bruce was finishing up a lesson with his students when he spotted Red standing by the door. He waved him in, but Red hesitated. I don't want to take up your time," Red said. Bruce raised an eyebrow. "You're never taking up my time." Red swallowed hard and stepped forward. He held out the $20 bill Bruce had given him. "I don't need this anymore," he said. "I got a job. It's not much, just cleaning at a restaurant. But it's a start. I came to give this back. Bruce looked at the bill, then at Red. He didn't take it. Instead, he folded Red's fingers around it. No, Bruce said. You've earned it. Now find someone who needs it more than you did. Red felt his throat tighten. For the first time in a long time, he didn't just feel like a man surviving, he felt like a man living. Red's transformation didn't happen overnight, but people started noticing. The students at Bruce's gym saw how he changed, not just physically, but in the way he carried himself. He spoke with more confidence, made eye contact, and no longer hunched over like a man expecting the world to beat him down. One day, a student named Daniel, who had seen Red since the beginning, decided to share his story online. He wrote a heartfelt post on social media. A few months ago, a homeless man asked Bruce Lee for $1. Bruce didn't just give him money, he gave him a purpose. He taught him discipline, self-respect, and strength. That same man, who once had nothing, is now standing on his own 2 feet. This is what real leadership looks like. Daniel posted a before and after photo. One of Red in his ragged clothes outside the gym on the first day, and another of him now, standing tall in a clean jacket, his eyes full of life. The transformation was undeniable. At first, the post got a few likes from fellow students, but then it exploded. The Motivation Daily page said, "Bruce Lee didn't just teach a man to fight, he changed his entire mindset. This is why he was more than just a martial artist." The Life Lessons page said, "I got chills reading this. This proves that sometimes people don't need money, they need a chance." Thousands of comments poured in. Some praised Bruce for his wisdom. Others shared their own struggles, saying they wished they had met someone like Bruce in their darkest times. Even local news stations picked up the story, and soon, journalists started showing up at the gym, wanting to interview Bruce. One evening, after a long training session, Bruce sat on the floor, wrapping his hands when Red walked in. He looked hesitant. "Something wrong?" Bruce asked. Red shifted uncomfortably. I saw the post. People are talking about me. Feels weird." Bruce smiled. "Why?" Red rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know. I spent years being invisible. Now everyone's acting like I'm some kind of inspiration." Bruce studied him for a moment before saying, "You are, but don't let that change you. Recognition is just noise. What matters is what you do next." Red exhaled, nodding. He wasn't doing this for fame. He was doing it for himself. A week later, Red made a quiet decision. He started volunteering at the same homeless shelter where he once slept. He didn't want to be a celebrity. He wanted to be the man who helped someone else, the way Bruce helped him. One night, as he walked back through the city, he saw a young boy sitting on the curb, shivering in the cold. His clothes were torn, his hands tucked under his arms for warmth. Red hesitated. Then, he crouched down and held out the $20 bill. The boy's eyes widened. "For me?" Red smiled. "Only if you promise me something." "What?" "Someday when you don't need it anymore. Pass it on." The boy took the money, clutching it like it was the most precious thing in the world. Red patted his shoulder and walked away, his heart lighter than it had ever been. And somewhere, in the depths of the city, Bruce Lee smiled, knowing his lesson had taken root. Lee's one-inch punch. Bruce Lee's one-inch punch is the most well-known move in martial arts history. As its name suggests, the one-inch punch is a technique martial artists use to hit targets at incredibly close range. The thought that, if done right, an attacker can exert enough force to bring down his opponent makes it unique. Bruce Lee's one-inch punch gained widespread recognition as early as the 1960s, about 10 years before Lee rose to prominence as a global martial arts celebrity. Lee became famous when he demonstrated it at the Beach Karate National Championship. At the time, the martial arts community took notice of him widely. Interest in Lee's one-inch punch increased dramatically as his notoriety increased. Although Lee made the move so famous that many renowned martial artists from different kung fu forms now utilize it, Lee remains the most well-known practitioner of the technique. Keep watching. The story is just getting interesting. Lee did not come up with the one-inch punch suddenly in 1964. It is based on Chinese martial arts in general and the instruction he received as a teenager. Lee's martial arts expertise began in the 1950s when he trained under Wing Chun Grandmaster Wing Chun, who laid the groundwork for Lee's form of kung fu, Jeet Kune Do. The one-inch punch's tenets derive from its theory, since Wing Chun is a fighting style for close quarters. Lee was already acquainted with techniques designed for close quarters combat because of his training in Wing Chun. Before the one-inch punch was publicly unveiled, Bruce Lee's pupil, James DeMille, provided insight into Lee's development method. He claimed that Lee developed an enhanced version of an already known Wing Chun move. Lee attempted to shorten the technique by experimenting with various stances and angles, since he thought it would be more effective if performed from a closer range. Eventually, they found a combination that worked. Lee demonstrated its power once by throwing someone 16 feet back and landing them squarely in a chair. Lee's accuracy, instant execution, speed, a crucial attribute for which the actor is currently well known, and the precise angle at which he accomplished it are all responsible for his accomplishments. Bruce Lee's one-inch punch is mighty because of his speed, which is also one of the reasons so few martial artists have been able to replicate it so well. Lee's father taught him the foundations of martial arts. During his teenage years, Lee got entangled in gang disputes in Hong Kong, which resulted in a lot of street battles. Lee's studies of Wing Chun had the most significant impact on his development as a martial artist. After suffering defeats at the hands of rival gang members, 16-year-old Lee trained in Wing Chun under Ip Man in late 1956 and early 1957. Form practice, sticking hand drills, wooden dummy techniques, and free sparring were the main components of Ip's regular lessons. The classes followed no predetermined schedule. Between 1956 and 1958, Edward, the coach of the St. Francis Xavier's college boxing team, trained Lee in boxing. In 1958, Lee defeated Gary Elms, the defending champion, via knockout in the Hong Kong Schools Boxing Championship final. Following his relocation to the U.S., Lee was significantly impacted by heavyweight boxing champion Muhammad Ali, whose moves he observed and adopted into his style during the 1960s. Lee advocated mixed martial arts training and was especially interested in grappling. In addition to Jean Labelle, Lee received instruction from several judo practitioners in Seattle and California, including Fred Sato, Jesse Glover, Taki Kimura, Hayward Nishioka, and Wally J. He studied as much as he taught, and many of his early pupils were skilled in judo and other martial arts. On the set of The Green Hornet, Lee became friends with Labelle and offered to teach him striking arts in exchange for learning grappling tactics. Lee's grappling tactics. Prominent grapplers Lou Thez and Ed Lewis had taught Labelle to catch wrestling, and vital judo and catch wrestling techniques can be found in Lee's Tao of Jeet Kune Do. Ji Han-jai, the Hapkido instructor, also taught him some grappling techniques. Glover claims that Lee's main observation about judo's ineffectiveness was when it came to seizing the opponent. During their first training session, Glover demonstrated an Osoto Gari for Lee, which Lee thought was a good technique, but he didn't appreciate that Glover had to cling to Lee. Lee learned how to avoid being tackled or taken to the ground by opponents while living in Seattle. Glover said that Lee would not go to the ground if he could get you standing up. Still, Lee told Labelle that he wished to incorporate judo into his fighting technique. He added judo throws, arm locks, and chokeholds to Jeet Kune Do, including the Osoto Gari. Lee showcased grappling moves in his films, including Way of the Dragon, where his character finishes his opponent Chuck Norris with a neck hold inspired by Labelle. Lee felt grappling was not very useful in action choreography because it was not visually distinctive. In addition, Lee and Han-jae trade grappling techniques in Game of Death, and Lee uses wrestling to subdue Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's character. The training regimen of the Great Gama, an Indian at all, The Dragon Flag Bruce Lee was an extreme sportsman. According to his widow, Linda Lee, he would watch TV athletes perform full splits and never miss an opportunity to work out. Bruce's wife claimed that he would practice and hone his talents virtually every minute of the day. He knew he would need to put in a tremendous deal of practice and exercise to be the best martial artist in the world. Building up his core was Lee's top priority out of all the muscles in his body, since he felt that the stomach region, or core, is involved in practically every movement and is crucial in martial arts. Lee created what is now known as the Dragon Flag in his honor to strengthen his core. It is regarded as one of the most challenging core workouts available if you can't figure it out. Since Lee didn't play around, though Lee is said to have been able to sustain his entire body on the edge of a bench with only his shoulders touching anything, while the rest of his body remained perfectly rigid and horizontal to the ground, Stallone may have popularized the move in Rocky IV. These days, martial artists worldwide use Bruce's Dragon Flag exercises as a standard because of his ability to make martial artists understand the value of having strong core muscles. Stay tuned. The best part of the video is just around the corner. Lee's superhuman strength. Bruce Lee's sheer power is one of his accomplishments that many people fail to recognize. Although it may seem apparent that a martial artist must possess strength, most people are unaware of Bruce Lee's actual level of strength. Most people think that having very massive muscles equates to strength. Most likely, when you imagine someone who is powerful, you envision someone roughly 6 feet tall with more muscles than they could need. But Bruce Lee was a tiny man, but he possessed strength beyond the reach of most people's imaginations. Examining his training bags is a simple method to demonstrate this. Bruce practiced punching and kicking with training bags like other people do, but he would devour these packages in an instant. He would frequently pound through or rupture standard punching bags to the point where it became inconvenient for him to use them. Bruce would therefore have to locate denser, heavier sacks that would not break under the impact of his extraordinary power. Remember that a typical punching bag weighs roughly 50 kilograms. However, Bruce frequently had to utilize bags weighing more than 135 kilograms. According to reports, Bruce was able to kick these bags many feet into the air, which just served to highlight how amazing things are. Bruce could send these sacks moving, but if you tried to kick one yourself, they probably wouldn't move more than an inch or two when you made contact. Bruce Lee understood the human body like a pro. Not only could he perform an astonishingly high quantity of push-ups, but he could complete them with just one hand. He was once put through a test to determine how many push-ups he could complete. Bruce boldly decided to go further and challenged himself to perform push-ups with just 2 fingers. He accomplished more than 200 push-ups in this try. Later, he set a higher standard and accomplished at least 100 push-ups using his thumb. If that weren't enough, he frequently performed hundreds of pull-ups with just one hand. But there's still another awe-inspiring accomplishment. Bruce Lee could perform more than 1,500 consecutive push-ups without pausing if you were to judge him only on his standard form. Although that is utterly unbelievable, that is the reality. There was no man like this. That's not all. Bruce Lee enthusiasts have long known this, but those unfamiliar with martial arts might not. Bruce Lee was acclaimed as one of the world's best martial arts actors when he shot to fame in the 1960s and 1970s. But he came dangerously close to failing in the film industry. You might wonder why, since he was just too quick. Filmmakers could not capture Bruce Lee's movements in real time when they worked on The Green Hornet, one of his most well-known TV series. We now own cameras capable of recording at 30, 60, 120, or even 240 frames per second. However, most cameras in the 1960s and 70s had trouble recording film at a speed of only 24 frames per second. As a result, most of Bruce Lee's fight scenes appeared incorrectly in the film. As the filmmakers soon discovered, Bruce could throw 9 punches in a second. In addition, he had a 6-second kickoff speed. Bruce appeared motionless in numerous combat scenes because capturing his movements on a camera that could only capture 24 frames per second at most was difficult. Producers on the set then claimed that the footage they captured showed Bruce standing still as his foes descended around him. In actuality, though, his talent was too outstanding for the movies to match. The filmmakers had to ask Bruce to slow down so they could follow him properly, which helped to correct the dilemma. But even after that, his movements appear quite hazy on camera. If you enjoy watching martial arts movies, you've watched Karate Kid before. When you watch the movie again, you probably remember a scene where Daniel LaRusso practices using chopsticks to capture flies. What looks easy on the surface turns out to be quite challenging. Bruce Lee, though, would go one further. Regretfully, there was never a flawless photo of this accomplishment. However, according to reports, Bruce Lee would throw pieces of rice into the air and use chopsticks to catch them. He took this action to sharpen his reflexes in the most remarkable manner imaginable. He was reportedly very expert at it, seeing the rice practically every time it was thrown into the air. His reflexes were significantly quicker than any of his rivals at the moment. And after all these years, nobody has been able to equal or exceed his achievements. It seems so complex that many people today question whether Bruce Lee was able to accomplish this accomplishment at all. However, this is simply one more instance of Bruce Lee's superhuman abilities. Jeet Kune Do. Bruce Lee is the creator and practitioner of Jeet Kune Do, also known as JKD. It is a hybrid martial art that translates to way of the intercepting fist in Chinese. It developed as a new school of martial arts philosophy from Lee's experiences in unarmed combat and self-defense and eclectic Zen Buddhist and Taoist beliefs. As an eclectic martial art, it relies on a fighting style heavily influenced by Wing Chun, Tai Chi, Taekwondo, boxing, fencing, and Jiu-Jitsu. Bruce Lee himself never formalized Jeet Kune Do before his death, forcing later JKD practitioners to rely upon their interpretation of the philosophy created by Bruce Lee. The central idea of Jeet Kune Do is the interception of the opponent and making corresponding responses or counterattacks that strike at incoming attacks. JKD also incorporates principles to help practitioners make instant decisions and improve the physical and mental self. The story just got much more enjoyable. 4 universal combat truths that Lee believed were self-evident and, if followed, would lead to combat success were incorporated into Jeet Kune Do. He thought that the 4 combat ranges in particular were crucial to his development as a total martial artist. Additionally, mixed martial arts are mostly tied to this principle. The intercepting idea comes from the belief held by JKD practitioners that a potent offense is always the best defense. Lee thought an opponent had to approach a target to attack them. This presented a chance to intercept that assault or motion. Intercepting physical attacks is not the only application of the interception principle. According to Lee, many nonverbals and telegraphs, subtle motions that an opponent is blind to, can be read or intercepted and utilized to one's benefit. Forming the offensive aspect of JKD, the 5 ways of attack are attacking categories that assist practitioners of Jeet Kune Do organize their fighting repertoire. The defensive part of JKD consists of the ideas of stop strikes and stop kicks, and simultaneous parrying and punching, which were taken from European fencing and Wing Chun's principle of simultaneous striking and defending. Lee adapted these ideas for unarmed combat and incorporated them into the JKD framework. Additionally, these ideas support the other interception principle. Lee said martial arts systems ought to be as adaptable as feasible. He frequently utilized the analogy of water to explain why flexibility is a valued quality in martial arts. Water has limitless flexibility. It can be seen through, yet it may also sometimes make objects invisible. It can break apart, circumnavigate obstacles, reassemble on the opposite side, or smash through obstacles. It can flow by the tiniest pebble or slowly lap at the toughest boulders to dissolve them. These are the qualities Lee thought a martial system ought to possess. Because of this rigidity, JKD students reject conventional fighting tactics, training regimens, and Confucian pedagogy in traditional kung fu schools. JKD is an incredibly flexible, dynamic idea because it is constantly changing. Bruce Lee is credited with saying, "Take what is beneficial, throw away what is useless." It is encouraged by JKD students to study every possible kind of warfare. This is thought to increase one's understanding of other combat techniques, build up one's armory, and teach one how to counter such strategies. Lee, the magician. If you've ever watched a magician up close, you've undoubtedly seen this timeless trick of taking a coin from behind someone's ear. Most magicians master this fundamental trick at some time in their careers. Unbelievably, Bruce Lee used to execute an identical feat for his followers. Bruce Lee would offer you a coin and place it in your hand, rather than hiding one behind your ear. He would want you to extend your hand as far apart as possible. Bruce then had you close your palm before he could take the coin from you, detecting even the slightest movement on his part. No one could ever stop this man from taking the coin out of someone's palm because of how fast he moved, but Bruce continued to refine the trick over time, making it even more impressive. Bruce would not only take the penny before the person could close their hand, but he would also replace it with a different one. Whenever you believed the situation was under control, he would open your palm and show you that a new coin had been inserted. Imagine, please, if this man had chosen to use his abilities for evil rather than good. He would have been an expert swindler. Fortunately, Bruce made a far more honorable life choice. What do you think about the story, and how has it inspired you? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click on the following video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.